Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at my Game Week 12 team selection. So as usual, we're going to go through how I did for Game Week 11. The less said about it, the better, so we'll very quickly go through it, and then we'll take a look at my Game Week 12 transfer plans, see who I'm intending to bring in. It's a spicy differential this week, so a little bit of a spoiler, and then we'll take a look at my Game Week 12 team. So I'm recording this video just after the Game Week 12 press conferences, so this video will include all of the latest injury updates that I've heard from the press conferences. So hopefully you find this video useful, and if you do, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So very quickly, once again, let's speak about Game Week 11 as quickly as possible because it was a horrible game week for so many of us, and the game week average was 32 points, and that's really low considering that we played 10 full games in game week 11. There have been previous game weeks where in past seasons, maybe game week 29 to game week 30, that kind of period where there's only 4 games in that particular game week. The lowest average I think was 29 points if I'm not wrong. So considering we played 10 games in game week 11 and the game week average was 32 points, that kind of tells us how bad of a game week it was for the majority of FPL managers as well. So I think the way I'm taking Game Week 11 is I'm seeing it as a blip. I mean, a lot of us went into Game Week 11 with great teams on paper, but I guess it just serves as a reminder for us that just because we have great teams on paper, it doesn't mean that we will know the outcome of all the games. And at the end of the day, football is fluid and anything can happen, right? So as we've seen in Game Week 11, Haaland blanks, he gets 1 point against Bournemouth, even though Man City absolutely destroy Bournemouth. And then everyone else pretty much blanked as well. Medicash coming off before the 60th minute, Tsimikas as well blanking there. All the other players with great fixtures all also blanking, right? Son, Saka, Salah, Watkins, every single one of them blanked. The only player that returned for me outside of Bowen, right? The only 2 players that returned for me are Bowen and Gehi, right? So Bowen, of course, he actually could have gotten more, right? And in the grand scheme of things for Game Week 11, if he had gotten an assist for his cross to Mikel Antonio, then maybe a double-digit haul there would have been a great differential there, right? But obviously he just came away with 7 points, so happy enough there because he's just one of the 2 players that returned for me. And then of course Mark Gehi, 5-pointer there. So really nothing much to speak about here. Archer on the bench with 9-pointer is just there to rub salt into the wound. So 26 points that I scored in Game Week 11, not great. I dropped 200k places to 1.2 million. Not where I want to be, but I think moving forward into Game Week 12, the team looks good. Generally, when I say that, maybe the outcome may not be as good, but the team does look good for the future game weeks. So we'll see this as a blip, and let's look forward into Game Week 12. So my transfer move for Game Week 12 is to bring in a very spicy differential, remove Dan Burn and bring in Livramento. Right, so I did mention in my transfer plans video that Dan Burn was not an urgent transfer for me. I had perfectly fine defenders, but in light of recent events which I will touch on later on in terms of injuries and also the performances of players, particularly Tsimikas as well, it has kind of forced my hand a little bit, and I will touch on that later on, but we'll focus on the replacements for Dan Burn here and why I've gone for Livramento. Right, so Livramento is at 4.3 million, right? And as I mentioned also in the transfer plans video, that I can't go upwards from Dan Burn because I don't have any money in the bank. So 4.6 million was my budget. I was looking at options like Harry Maguire. I was looking at Jamal Lascelles. I was even looking at Baldock, where I remove all the money from my defense, go for the cheapest playing defender, and then see where I can spend the money elsewhere, right? But the reason why I've gone for Livramento is multiple fold, right? One is that I feel like Livramento is that kind of player that he can present quite high of an upside because of the role that he's playing. So it is possible that moving forward he will be the first choice right back, because it seems as if Trippier will be moving to the left back now, right? And in terms of that kind of defensive formation, I do think like that will be the backline of Newcastle that we will see moving forward, at least until players like Botman return, and of course Dan Burn will only return earliest next year. Right? So I think the horizon for Livramento is quite long, that he will be quite relevant in the Newcastle defense. And on top of that, I think Botman could be in for a return quite soon. Now, obviously, this is speculation, but based off of the latest quotes from Eddie Howe, he says that Botman has been seeing a specialist, right, and he's back now in the Newcastle camp. They're continuing his assessments, etc. But it seems like the signs are looking better, right? And as compared to Dan Burn, who just got injured, I think Botman is slightly closer to a return. So I would think that Livramento does have a longer horizon in my team as compared to Jamal Lascelles, right? And secondly, of course, the attacking role that Livramento plays, right? Because assuming Livramento and Jamal Lascelles both start consistently, 100% Livramento is the asset that I would prefer because of how attacking he is, right? We already saw in the EFL Cup game where he broke through from defense straight into the midfield, cut through all the players and played a wonderful ball to Almiron for Newcastle to score their first goal in the EFL Cup. So I really remember that, and I think in general when we saw his performances in Southampton as well, we know he's such a great attacking player. So definitely, I think there needs no justification that Livramento is a better attacking asset than Jamal Lascelles. So I'm going for the upside here, spending 0.3 million more than Jamal Lascelles to go for Livramento, go for a little bit more of a differential with high upside, and hopefully this will pay off, right? So I'm taking a little bit of a risk here. 100% I understand that he is not nailed in the team, but I think I'm willing to take this risk looking at the other players in my team as well that can potentially cover, right? So there we go. This is my transfer move for game week 12 and why I've landed on Livramento. Maybe touching on the other options as well. Jamal Lascelles, I think I've already justified why I don't want to go for him. I rather Livramento. Baldock, I don't think he's an option that I really want in terms of how relevant he will be to my team. I don't think he will be a player I want to start week in, week out. And bringing Dan Burn out, I will have to have a defender that can play this week as well, which I'll touch on later on why. Right, so Livramento, he plays Bournemouth this week. I think he will come into the side very nicely and hopefully he will return there. And as for Harry Maguire, I just can't see myself going for a Manchester United pick. I mean, I understand they have the good fixtures, etc., but I just can't see myself going for Harry Maguire because the Manchester United defense is just not one that I would trust. And in terms of the fixtures moving forward, even though Manchester United's fixtures are better than Newcastle, Newcastle are by far the better team. So I'd rather have Newcastle playing at home against difficult teams like Chelsea and Manchester United, which are fixtures that they do have coming up, right? Than Manchester United playing slightly mid-tier teams, right? I'd rather have the Newcastle United defender, and that's kind of why I've ruled out Harry Maguire as well. So there we go. This is why I've landed on Livramento, and let's now take a look at my team and also justify to you guys why I have made this move and brought it forward instead of delaying the Dan Burn transfer to game week 13, which was initially the plan, right, to sell Dan Burn for a Arsenal defender. So after bringing Livramento into the team, this is how my game week 12 team is likely to look like. It's still a 3-5-2 formation. I've just done a straight swap of Livramento in for Dan Burn, and Livramento comes straight into the starting 11 here, lined up right beside Medicash and Gehi. Now Medicash, of course, he played the last 20 minutes of the game against Alkmaar, so he will be fine for game week 12 as well against Fulham at home. So fully expect him to get something there. Gehi as well has Everton at home. I think it's a pretty decent fixture for him defensively. Right, so touching on the midfield and obviously we're looking at Saka here because he's yellow flagged. He is actually one of the main reasons why I pushed forward my transfer of Dan Burn to Livramento earlier into this game week, right? Because initially the plan was to go into game week 13 with 2 free transfers and I will have more money then to upgrade Dan Burn to an Arsenal defender, but instead, because I've made the move now in game week 12, I've had to go for a cheaper defender, which is Livramento. Now, Saka's news or the latest update is that he hasn't trained after the game against Sevilla. So basically, there will be a late assessment done on him whether he will be fit to start against Burnley or not. And I feel like for him, it's a case where if he starts, if he's fit to play, then he will start the game. And of course, I feel like he will get a decent run out. He will at least play about 70 to 80 minutes, I feel. Right, so that's with Saka. And of course, if he's not fit to play, I don't think we see him start at all. Right, so I don't think it's going to be a case where they risk him for the last 30 minutes or so, especially against a team like Burnley where I expect them to already be ahead by a couple of goals by halftime. Right, so I see that as a situation where if he's fit, he will start. If he isn't, he'll just be benched. Right, so then again, I do have to prepare my team as well for the case where he's benched. And given that I wasn't well prepared for it without making any transfers, basically. If I had Dan Burn in my team, my bench would be really, really thin, right? And of course, there is also another player that I am quite afraid of in terms of game week 12 minutes, and that is Tsimikas, who's currently on the bench right now, right? He plays Brentford at home, but he's just come off a shocking performance against Toulouse, right? So I do think like Tsimikas' minutes may not be as nailed moving forward. Maybe potentially the performance in Europe has kind of shaken him a little bit, and maybe Jurgen Klopp doesn't trust him as much anymore, and Gomez could be the starting left back in game week 12. So I'm not too confident of Tsimikas' minutes as well, which is why I kind of push forward the transfer to bring Livramento in so that I can start Livramento, and then Tsimikas will be on the bench. If Saka isn't fit, then players like Tsimikas can come in and potentially Archer if necessary, right? So that's kind of the thinking behind why I've brought forward the move and sold Dan Burn early. And of course, another reason as well is that Dan Burn is dropping in price tonight, right? So I've pretty much going to make this move already. As of recording, I haven't made the move, but I probably will make it before the price change happens in the morning, right? So there we go with these three players: Livramento, Saka, and Tsimikas. And just touching on the other players in my team as well that I haven't mentioned. So players like Bowen, I think I'm perfectly fine to have him. In fact, I think I'm really glad that I've gone for him here, because moving forward, the fixtures are really good for West Ham, and he's definitely still one of the standout options. He was quite unlucky, as I mentioned, in game week 11 not to come away with more points. So I'm hoping for something from him in game week 12 as well. For Son, I think it's important to mention as well that Maddison now is ruled out, at least for the next couple of months. And I think that will definitely have an impact on Spurs' attack. How great of an impact, we're not sure at this point in time. There are also other players that have been either suspended or are currently injured for Spurs. Players like Richarlison is still injured, right? And he's just gone for surgery, and he will only be back, later on. And there are also players in the defense that are currently suspended, like Udogi and also Romero as well, right? So other players that are returning are players like Bentancur, right? And maybe Lo Celso could be given a run in as well, but I mean, definitely he's not the first choice, midfielder for Spurs as well. So I think we're going to see a very different Spurs side in general against Wolves, and for the next couple of game weeks where these players that I just mentioned are going to miss out. So I think that will definitely have an impact on Spurs. I don't think it's a sign to sell Son immediately, but I will want to assess him for the next couple of game weeks. And I think if Spurs are on a downtrend, or they aren't performing as well enough or as good enough as I would hope, then I think Son could be on his way out of my team, right? But for now, he will stay in game week 12 and he plays Wolves away, right? So I'm fine with that fixture. For Adingra, he plays Sheffield at home. He's just come off 1 goal and 1 assist against Ajax, in Europe. And I think, obviously, I would have hoped that he'd save those returns for game week 12, or at least for the Premier League. But I think the signs are looking good, right? He's getting the approval of the manager. I think he's getting decent minutes as well. He started, I think 4 out of 4 of the last few games as well. So the minutes are looking good for Adingra, and I think at 5 million is just great value. The only thing is whether Cole Palmer is a better asset to have in this position, and I think for the time being, I don't think the fixtures for Cole Palmer are there. So I think I'm happy to have Adingra for the next couple of game weeks, and if Cole Palmer continues to tick along, then I think Adingra to Cole Palmer is a straightforward move for maybe game week 15 or game week 16. So that's my thoughts about the midfielders. In the attack, it's Haaland and Watkins. I think they're going nowhere. I've seen a couple of comments as well thinking whether we should sell Haaland or sell Watkins. I'm doing nothing with them. I think I'm perfectly happy with how they've been playing. And just because they blank in certain game weeks does not mean we need to sell them immediately, right? So I think I'm happy to have both of them. And in fact, I think those that don't have Haaland at this point are already starting to think of ways to get Haaland back sooner rather than later, right? So there we go with this team. And just to touch on the bench, Tsimikas first on the bench, as I mentioned. In case Saka misses out, I think I'm happy to have Tsimikas first on the bench as an option. If not, there's always Archer, who plays Brighton away. Not a great fixture for him, right? But Archer is coming off 1 goal in game week 11 as well. Incredible goal. So if he continues to take along, he does have Bournemouth moving forward. So I think he could be a decent player to have on the bench as well. Right, so there we go. Just to touch on captaincy as well before we end the video. Currently, it's on Salah. Initially, going into game week 12, barring any injuries, I actually wanted to captain Saka. But I think now it is a little bit too risky to captain Saka. So for now, it's on Salah. and I think it's fixtures wise one of the ones that I think would be better to go for. I mean, Haaland could definitely score against Chelsea, but I kind of have to back Salah playing against Brentford at Anfield, right? So there are other ways that I can go about doing this. I can also captain Watkins as a differential. Bowen is in for a shout as well. And Haaland, as always, is possible to captain him. So I think I'm not 100% set on my captain at this point in time, but I have it on Salah. Come the deadline stream, maybe if I decide to go different, I could go to any of the options that I just mentioned. But my captaincy decisions have not been 100% accurate as of the past. I think the past 3 game weeks I haven't gotten captaincy returns, so that's not great. And that's also one of the reasons why I have my rank at 1.2 million now. So I definitely have to start nailing my captain decisions if I want to improve my rank moving forward. So I will spend a little bit more time thinking about my captaincy decision. But in terms of transfers, I'm pretty set on Dan Burn to Livramento, and this is likely how the team is going to look like. So let me know what you guys think. Slightly longer of a video, but I think there were a lot of points, a lot of players that I wanted to cover in this video. So if you appreciated the content and you do enjoy this video, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. And I'll catch you guys as usual 3 hours before the Game Week 12 deadline, before we go into the international break. Thank you for watching to this point, and I'll catch you guys in the deadline stream tomorrow.